Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the June Global Permayouth Festival. So I'd just like to start off with an acknowledgement to country. So I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on we each respectively meet. Here in Crystal Waters, we're on Gubbi Gubbi land, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledge that this land was never ceded. So if you do know where your traditional or who your traditional owners are, then just put them in the chat just to acknowledge them or after your name thank you very much for coming everyone. So we'd like to welcome today Artist's family. So Meg, Patrick, Woody and Zero the dog. Hello, thank you. So we visited you just before COVID actually to your very, very nice quarter of an acre. And so, thank you so much for coming. So, they live in Dalesford in a fully permacultured quarter of an acre block, and they live very much in the gift economy and very connected to the land, looking after the land, farming the land, and living a very almost one planet lifestyle. So Woody unschools, and a lot of us here homeschool. I unschool. And so they also run the Tree Elbow University, which is teaching a radically simple way of life. And they've got a YouTube channel with a following, and they're heading off on a bike journey soon. So would you like to tell us where you're heading off to and anything else about you you'd like to add?
Sure.
We can with a feather, yeah.
So we'll fly a hold of feathers up in the air today just for practice, and most of them went to a beach, which is that direction, which is called Port Arlington. And so we've decided, because most of them went to Port Arlington, we're gonna go to most of the tips of the feather went to Port Arlington, that direction, so we're gonna go there.
Nice.
This year is very much about letting go. We're very involved in our community, and it's been 7 years since we've been on a really big adventure. So and part of letting go is basically using the feather to court chance and to sort of see where the spirit is going to take us rather than have a determined path. And so Woody was really hoping that we would end up down near Port Arlington, because he's a really serious fisher person. And so even though it's going to be cold along the south coast, we'll probably head down there and go spearfishing and fish off the jetties and travel on our bikes and again collect as much forageable foods and fish as we can, and move just with our pedal power. And so 2 bikes, 4 mammals including Zero, and so Woody and I will be on a tandem, and Meg and Zero will be on one bike, which is kind of a tandem for dogs.
Except he doesn't care. So when Woody was a baby, when he was 14 months old, we went on a similar trip where Woody was on the back of my bike and our older boy was on the back of the tandem with Patrick and Zero at the helm. So this is not completely unfamiliar territory for us to head out on a year-long adventure on our bicycles. So when Patrick and I first got together 15 years ago, we both had cars. And we both had regular jobs, and we both shopped at supermarkets, and if we wanted to go somewhere further afield, we just hopped on an aeroplane. So bit by bit over the years, we've gotten rid of a whole lot of things, including our 2 cars. So we've been a biking and walking and public transport family for over a decade now. So when a family who don't have a car and don't want to borrow a car, when they want to go off on an adventure, and they want to carry a lot of their own gear, so for hunting and fishing and foraging and things like that, it just seemed like a really good choice and an option for us to go by bicycle.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing journey that you're heading off on. Best of luck for that. So you said that 15 years ago you were kind of living like a normal kind of life. So how did you start to get into permaculture and then evolve that into what you call neopeasantry? And also, if you'd like to just tell us a bit about neopeasantry too.
Okay.
Yep.
Sure. So I'll start with that first question, and then we can work towards the first question. No, I'll start with the second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So neopeasantry is really just a reclaiming of our ancestral common sense when it comes to economy. So the last few generations of our respective ancestors have been severed from the land. Although on my side of the family, there's always been some sort of level of access to land and some sort of agricultural or garden agriculture being performed at some level. So I kind of feel like I've never really lost that connection, even though it wasn't the entire economy of, say, my parents or my grandparents. So I think in many ways permaculture is a reclamation of land bondedness and the kinds of economies that can come out of having intimate relationships with a local loved land. And so, of course, that is highly problematic in a country like Australia and many parts of the world that we've been a part of our heritage has been a part of the colonization project. And so how do we reclaim a land bondedness and an intimacy and a deep love and respect for land that has been stolen? So that, I guess, has been our biggest path. The way we got into permaculture was through, I guess, other forms of activism, looking at the way that, yeah, do you want to say something?
No.
The way in which the world 15 years ago or even longer, I mean, Meg and I have both been pretty active environmentally all our lives, all our adult lives. But particularly looking at food, medicine, and energy, the problems of those three capitalisms, and recognizing that private property and the bigger geopolitical problems of the world, the dominance of greed as a major sort of cultural premise, even though obviously it's not spoken like that, it is ultimately money generation, and those who are celebrated in the dominant culture are those who are chasing money or are successful or billionaires or so this whole problem, this sort of collapse of eldership has created so many social and environmental problems, and so we, I guess, didn't immediately start with permaculture. We started with the food system particularly, and then looked at food, medicine, and energy, and then kind of arrived at permaculture, because that is if you're concerned about those three types of resources that are so harmful to the planet, then permaculture is a good place to arrive at. And then we woke up to the fact that we live in the same town as Sue Dennett and David Holmgren, and they've since become very good friends. And Meg has worked for those guys for about 12 to 10 years or so. So yeah, I think, yeah, they're the pathways, yeah.
And one of the things that we really liked about, one of the aspects of permaculture that we really liked is the creating the change that you wish to see in the world and being that change. Mm-hmm. And so instead of fighting against something, it was working hard towards something really positive. Yeah. And I'm sure that's a similar kind of path for all of us here about what we like so much about permaculture, because yes, the world has many challenges and many issues that we are all part of and that we all face, but instead of banging our heads against the doors of Parliament and we can dwell forever in the shame that we're born into this culture, and also the grief the grief of the state of the world. But if we stay in that grief, then we are of no use. So we really need to turn that into creative propulsion into something really positive, where we can work towards being part of a response to the problems.
Yeah.
Productive shame and productive guilt. I think it's important to really be honest about the shame or the guilt or the discomfort for the culture that we find ourselves in, that values all these things that are ruining the climate and ruining the soil and ruining forests. So there's a lot of grief in that, but to be stuck in that, as Meg is saying, just to be stuck there kind of renders us a part of the problem as well. So to respond, it's almost like a productive shame or a productive guilt. So out of the shame and the guilt and the discomfort comes great gifts. And I feel like that's the thing that we've really discovered by embracing permaculture principles, and also, looking back to our ancestral ways of being, and without romanticizing them, seeing there's a lot in our past, a lot of stories in our past that just aren't shared in a contemporary sense. So modernity looks back at the past and says, that's the dark ages, everyone was sick and everyone was malnourished and everybody was living in poverty, and what modernity has offered is this great life. Well, of course, that's just completely untrue. There is a lot of suffering in human history, and there has, that's half the story. The other half of the story is the rich and deep cultural gatherings that would happen on common land, the celebration of the seasons, the honoring of the winter solstice, the honoring of the summer solstice, of the changing seasons that are so sort of integral to a community that wants to be earth honoring. And so these all of us in our indigenous souls, in our indigenous selves, all of us have these ancestors that performed life. But for many of us, particularly those of us from European cultures, you have to go a long way back to bring those stories forward. But not all European cultures. There are some that are still very close to their indigeneity and their indigenous soul. But I think for those of us who have been sort of exiled from Europe, put on boats, many of my ancestors were convicts. Some were free settlers looking to get out of the life of poverty. But yeah, it's, that I think excavating the past is important to understand that the modernist story of today is that everything in the past was terrible and only the contemporary present is worthwhile. And that's been a terrible myth. I've probably said enough about that.
Yeah, so standing for something then rather than against it, and creating something out of that too. And so just stepping back into kind of like permaculture and like what you do at your place, can you tell us a little bit about what are the ways that you live almost one planet life? So like with permaculture, with no cars and unschooling, and what do you do?
What's your day look like?
Yeah.
Maybe is that what you're trying to ask?
Pretty much, yeah.
So our day starts with a cup of tea, but we don't have an electric kettle, so we can't just fill up the kettle with water from the mains water and flick a switch and then we have hot water. We have a wood stove that powers our house. So it's winter here, so we have it on from the minute we wake up to the moment we go to bed, and then we let it die down overnight. So we not having a car, we need to gather firewood in wheelbarrows or bike trailers. So that starts a few months. So in order to get a cup of tea, that process starts a few months before when we're gathering wood. So it's usually Patrick and Woody who go into the forest, which is nearby to here, walking distance or bike riding distance, and sensitively and very carefully taking fallen wood, of course, leaving some for habitat. We live in a very fire-prone area here. So with our neighbours, we are stewards of our local forest on a very informal but serious way. And we have working bees, and people take firewood. We have gatherings in that forest as well. We have monthly, lots of plantings. We've built Leaky Weir, series of Leaky Weirs. We run a bush school in that forest. So it's in our best interest that that forest is loved and looked after. We don't just go and just take wood just because we need it to warm our homes.
Hey, Meg, do you just want to describe a little bit like what is a Leaky Weir as well? Because that might be something of interest as well to talk about.
Sure. And to talk about gold, because this is this area was known in the gold rush for having lots of gold. So all of our forests were completely upturned, totally denuded, and the creek system was completely upturned as well. So we're trying to reinstate the creek as it was. And sorry, Woody, could you please not do that? Putting wood in the oven.
Oh, nice. Important job.
So the creek is like with the Leaky Weirs, you're trying to re-establish what would naturally take place over maybe hundreds, if not thousands of years. You're doing much more quickly. So the gully was ripped out, lowered quite dramatically in the pursuit of gold. And so it's sort of like a very sort of eroded bank that's being held by blackberries. So a whole lot of fallen trees in the forest then get rolled down using gravity. Basically, the only tools we use is to make these is a shovel and a very small chainsaw, and roll down these enormous logs and really create almost much like beavers do in the Northern Hemisphere, to create these incredible, beautiful little series of dams. And so what that does, the Leaky Weir is a kind of sediment catch. So it holds up water, much like, similar to a swale, but different because it's in a creek system. And basically a whole lot of nutrient and water is held up weir by weir all the way down the creek. And then the water then spreads throughout the whole land, creating moisture in order to rehydrate that ecology. So it creates, in a fire-prone, this is the second most fire-prone region in Victoria. So what we're trying to do is to further, like the indigenous blackwood wattle is a shade-producing, beautiful habitat, medicine, ancestral medicine tree that is fire retarding. So we're trying to just ever so slightly, without doing too much intervention, create a forest that is shade and moisture and fire retarding. But at the same time, there's, but also get the forest in a place, because we had 2 to 5 meter blackberries that went all right down to the creek, covering everywhere, which are, really can fan a crown fire. So the fires can go right up into the canopies with the blackberries. So to get those on the ground using goats, so that we're working towards slowly, step by step, a way in which traditional burning, Aboriginal burning, can return to country, so that you've got these blackwoods and eucalypts, 3 or 4 different species of eucalypts that are the main dominant parent tree, the grandparent tree. And then underneath the canopies are a field of the blackberry, the gorse, and the broom by the goats. And then what we're finding is the indigenous ecology is coming back up, And then the leaky weirs in the creek are creating this chain of ponds, series of chains of ponds which are returning ducks and a plethora of birds, and the fishbone ferns are returning. And so this ecology is transforming very, very quickly by just this small intervention called the leaky weir and goat grazing. But again, just being forever mindful of traditional practices and Indigenous practices, and working with Uncle Rick Nelson, and he brings his the men's business boys across each year, and we do a working bee together, and we share a meal around the fire circle that we have in the forest. So that's very complex, but just trying to sort of give you a bit of a story around that nearby forest, and being, as Tyson Young Kaporta says, custodial, be performing as custodial species, or being a custodial species in this area. So it's not just our private little quarter acre where a lot of our food comes from, it's also the forest, the nearby forest commons, where we gather with community, and we honor, just as we did recently, the winter solstice, with 60 or 70 people with, you know, coming together in that.
I love the way that your cup of tea has exploded into this, and you know, this shows this incredible web of relationships. Like, how do goats connect with a cup of tea? Well, there you have it, you know, like and I think that's kind of at the core of what you're doing, is really kind of reweaving all the different elements of life back together again in a really connected way, and a way that's really connected to place, to culture, to history, to your neighbors, to all species, the plants and the animals.
Yeah, and not like, it's amazing how you're regenerating not only like the culture of the area, but also the landscape itself. So I think that's amazing. Yeah. So do you have like any advice for young people, like, you know, to connect back to land and to like culture in like a regenerative culture and like Aboriginal traditional culture, and, you know, connecting to our stories too, you know, like personally, ancestrally, and also, you know, as humanity? Yeah,
that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think we can just talk about our own experience and what's worked for us, and what that journey has looked like. And it started with the first principle of permaculture, observing and interacting, and really just paying attention to the land and listening to the land and watching, and then starting to be participants. So what trees are there, what native trees and are there in our local walker sphere, and how often does it rain, what birds are there, and then we sort of moved into more, for us it was more forageable food. So what bush tucker, what are the local edible, medicinal and fiber plants that are around, and yeah, really just trying to listen to the land. So for us that was a really important first step. And then another thing, you know, it's really great, everybody these days knows the Indigenous names for the land that they're on, and really to start bringing language back into common use. And for anyone who's from New Zealand, or anybody who's been to New Zealand or any other countries, like in Canada where they're bilingual, and you see the native language and the language of the settlers, you know, on all the street signs and taught in schools, and to go to New Zealand and to just have, you know, regular white folk using dropping in Maori words as part of their everyday language is really exciting. So just what names of different places do you know, or what local names? And we're very fortunate here that we have a couple of, we're on Jarrah country, and the language traditionally spoken here and hopefully will be forever is Djadjurrung. And we have there are a couple of local Djadjurrung scholars who are creating a dictionary, and we're going to release that as part of their research. So that's going to be really exciting for us, for all of us, to have access to that, and so we can speak the language of this land.
And decolonize the place names is a very good place to start, because Mount Franklin, which was named after Lord and Lady Franklin when they passed by on their horse, has been called Laugenbuch for maybe 40,000 years. And so in the instant of a couple of European aristocrats riding past on their horse, it was transformed. And so, and Coca-Cola, I think 70% of the bottled water market in Australia, which is a horrendous pollution ideology product, is named Mount Franklin after that mountain. So to decolonize it and to call that sacred old volcano Laugenbuch, and obviously language is sensitive. It's not the project of settlers to take over language, particularly when it's coming back to country. It really needs First People to be speaking that language and to restoring that language back into their communities before Second Peoples should really be learning it, or at least listening to what the community, the First People community of your area is wanting. But many Aboriginal communities in Australia are really wanting to return it in their own communities first. And I think to have respect and patience for that is really important. But at the same time, there is not just the human ancestral regard of the land, there is the more than human. And I think that many people in Australia who haven't got, we're very privileged and fortunate to have many Indigenous friends, and we have learned so much from them, but not everybody has, particularly when they're just starting out, this sort of process of belonging belonging as settlers in unceded land. But the land itself has ancestors, the trees have ancestors, the rocks are ancestors. And so if we can actually, we can be informed by listening deeply to the land in the absence of Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous relationships. So I think it's starting with the land herself, and that, yeah.
Yeah, and also if you don't, or for us, before we had made connections with local Jarrah people, there are so many films and books and podcasts and things available made by First Nations people from all over the world, and to really elevate those voices. So, you know, if you look through your libraries at home or look through your latest films that you've seen, are they just made by white people? Or are they, yeah, it would be really great to include some, First Peoples from all over the world, some different voices, so we can learn. And yeah, so do you guys know this book?
No.
Raising Free People by Akila Richards.
Yes, this is a really, the subtitle is Unschooling as Liberation and Healing Work. So for anyone sort of looking at the schooling system as, and you know, as part of the problem, like all of our institutions in Australia, and you know, many across the world are held and worked. People work in them with great intentions, in the schooling system, in the health system, even, dare I say, in the prison systems. But ultimately, the system itself, the systems of the institutions themselves are inherently violent. And what that means is that they serve the institution rather than serve people because of the nature of the setup. And so, and this book is a remarkable sort of examination of the force and the control that schooling has on young people, and how that then binds or incarcerates people for the rest of their lives. It's kind of a setting up of a kind of a way of being conformed that I guess, you know, there are, of course, it's not just all schools, and certainly we have friends and family who are teachers in schools. We have spoken at schools. We have we run a bush school with mostly school kids that come to it. But in that way, rather than creating a sort of us and them between schools and unschoolers or homeschoolers, we're actually created I guess an example of where school kids can come after school and see what an unschooling program looks like, and see what child-led learning looks like. And many of the kids in the program have some sort of label, sort of some pathological label put on them in the school environment. But when they're in the forest, those labels are ridiculous. And I think those labels are required if you need to get a whole bunch of kids to sit still in a very sort of manufactured space, such as a school, with hard surfaces, and the built environment is so sort of monocultural, really, and single species, that once you get a whole bunch of children, like we do, 20 kids out into the forest, without too many strictures, and with all the parents and the kids saying, yes, we accept that risk is a part of life. And so climbing trees and using knives and lighting fires and climbing cliffs and doing a whole lot of stuff that the modern school system has eradicated, completely got rid of. All of that incredibly important embodied muscle memory and intelligence that our ancestors had, and putting those things right back in forefront of their week. And all of those kids say this is the best part of their week, and they come from a big range of backgrounds in the community. So they're not just, in fact, I wouldn't. There's only a couple of kids that I would say are from permaculture households. So I think just sort of reaching into a bigger cross section and to offer something that is that gives the possibility for resilience building and stepping. It's not a competitive space, but for each child to step into their gift and their gifts. And I think that's the thing we wanted to talk about, I guess, in terms of, if we thought we might get advice, asked what advice
we could offer young people.
Yeah, is to find your gifts, because and find your gifts and develop your gifts, and then later to share your gifts to be in service to the world.
Part of one of your gifts as a family as a whole is music, and that's something that you're going to be sharing as you're going around too. Songs that you've written or music that you've adapted to poems. And Woody, you're part of that too, aren't you?
Yeah.
What do you play?
Violin.
Oh, are you guys going to play a song for us? Have you got your instruments?
We hadn't planned on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good.
What will we do? Clearing or?
Have you got one of your favorite? What's your favorite one, Woody?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. We might have to set up.
Okay.
Just push that back a bit.
Woody, do you want to tell us a little bit about what this song is while you're getting set up?
It's an old poem that Dad's mum sent for, and Dad put it to music.
Nice.
Do we sit on the couch?
Yeah.
How long have you been playing violin for, Woody?
Probably 4 years.
Cool.
I like the stickers on your violin.
He saved up and he bought that violin himself.
Oh,
Wow.
How did you raise the money to buy that, Woody? What were you doing?
Selling kindling at the local market.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. I can see that Chloe's got a violin on her image when she are you a violin player too, Chloe?
Yeah, she does.
You are. Great.
Feel free to play along.
Where is that?
Yep. So as Woody explained, this song is called Clearing, and the words are a poem by an American woman called Martha Popplewhite. And as Woody also said, so Patrick's mum sent him the poem and said, I think you might really like this. And Patrick put it to music, and we would like to play it for you now.
Thank you.
Nice.
Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, find a clearing in the dense forest of your life. Wait there patiently until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands, and you recognize and greet it. Falls into your own cupped hands, and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, find a clearing in the dense forest of your life. Wait there patiently until the song that is your life falls into your own cupped hands, and you recognize and greet it. Falls into your own cupped hands, and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue.
That was a very nice adaptation of the poem into music.
I love the words. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that was some of the comments too.
Should be on the radio.
Should be on the radio. Well, I think you will be by the time you finish going around on your journey. You're going to be singing your way around the country, aren't you? Or wherever you go to, you'll be setting up and singing your songs. How many songs have you got? Woody, have you got like a collection of songs?
Yeah, about 10 to start with, but
10.
we want to write a bunch more. So yeah, we'll be riding, fishing, foraging, singing, and camping. Free camping.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's
And
kind of
also being in, finding ways of being in service as well. What we found with our last trip, we did a whole lot of things. We exchanged permaculture designs for people's gardens for being put up in their little granny flat. We cooked meals and child-minded. We gave talks at schools on the way. We engaged. We stayed for 3 weeks in the Bentley blockade right up until the point that we won. We were going to stay on and on and on indefinitely, but the government pulled the pin on that, and just near Lismore. So so there are ways of being in community. What we found last trip is there's ways of being in community while traveling and taking permaculture to the road. And permaculture, of course, works very well in settlements. So what does it look like when we're moving? And so to be storytellers and to be moving at the speed of trust on a bicycle, yeah, it feels really good, and we're so excited about it.
I love that idea, going at the speed of trust. That is so beautiful, and really just focusing on the gift economy. You know, I think that's just, yeah, just what. Well, safe travels. I know Maya wants to see if we can have a chance for people to go into breakout rooms.
But we'd like to open it up for questions from anyone else.
Of course.
So does anyone have any things they'd like to ask Meg and Patrick and Woody? Put them in the chat, or either put your microphone on. Either works. Damon's just asked, can we follow your journey somewhere?
Yes. So we've just set up a website with some friends of ours. We're really wanting to move away from social media and big tech. That's right. So our website is artist as family, one word, .is. I
just popped that in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can subscribe to our videos or to the blog.
We'll be blogging as well.
We'll be blogging, we'll be vlogging. Yeah, so we still are going to be on social media, and our handle is Artist as Family, but we're working towards moving away from it.
Yeah, and on that independent website, you won't be spied upon, and you won't have your information sold on to third parties, and it's basically free from the kind of predatorial nature of the bigger tech and what they're doing with our data and where we go, and following what we like and dislike, and then building an algorithm on us and then selling that information on. So we're really committed to creating online media that doesn't do that. So it's been a long process. It's taken us 6 months, and then slowly we'll wean ourselves off those bigger tech once people come across. And I think this is the way of the future. Like, if we all can set up, peer-to-peer interactions online, and avoid the Mark Zuckerberg.
Thank you, Mark. Close.
The Zuckerbergs of this world.
And also we created the website as part of the gift economy. It's a gift exchange with some friends of ours who have just bought some land not far from here. So we're going to be doing a permaculture design and just walking around their land with them, and
a retro suburbia fit out of their house, and north facing glass house to grow seedlings and in the cold months, and just retrofit the house and the garden.
Fantastic. What I'm hearing really, like as a reflection for everyone else here, one of the things about, advice for young people, that you have these skills, these permaculture skills that are really tradable and valuable wherever you go. And that these are some, the skills of resilience and the skills of building community and building all of these different aspects of simple living are just perfect way of exchange wherever you go. And so I think that's a really beautiful reflection of something that you've shared with us today too.
And that's the thing about finding our gifts, because once we have found our gifts, not only can we be in service with those, but they are tradable as well.
Any other questions anyone would like to ask?
It's an amazing journey you're about to head off on. I wonder whether maybe if people just go into breakout rooms and just kind of like let all of that land. I mean, there's a whole lot of different aspects that are really a really broad and deep introduction to what it means to be a neo-peasant, or and that's the terminology that you're that you're using to describe this way of being? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I think, yeah, for us, yeah, it makes sense for us to call ourselves this, because for us, the peasant part of our ancestry, that's what we've connected to, because they were living in a very carbon positive way, and that's really what we're harking back to. And so, yeah.
And the neo locates our privilege in being able to choose to be peasant-like. So, you know, not shying away from the fact that we've been a couple of generations middle class. Our grandparents were all working class, and then before that we were peasants. And so we're actively choosing to go without, in voluntary simplicity in a way.
But also actively choosing to still have some technology. We have solar panels on the roof. We have a laptop and Wi-Fi for which we're able to speak to you. So so obviously it's not just the peasant, the neo is also the more modern aspect.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that term, and it can often, particularly for cultures and for people who are moving away from their peasant roots, which might only be a generation away, and modernity looks really promising, and life in the city, and without being able to have electric kettles and apps that you can click and receive supermarket food delivered to your door, and all this sort of stuff that looks so appealing, particularly if particularly if you've come from a culture where everything is very handmade, it's made from scratch, and the crops are sown and the animals are tended, and where your food is. And in many respects, I totally empathize with that, because we've had a few generations of relative privilege and wealth. It's almost kind of vulgar to some people that we're choosing to go, choosing to question progress, and because progress is a linear line, it's not a circular line. And so in many respects, our drawing on our ancestral wisdom and drawing on the wisdom that this land holds, both peopled and non-peopled wisdom, for many, many generations, of making ecological economies that don't harm the earth. Now, modernity might be great in terms of our comfort, but it's terrible in terms of our future generations. And so we're really championing this term because it feels right to us but when we also say we're giving so much up, we are, but when you say no to certain things, you open the doors to so many other things. And that's what we've found, that the richness, the time, we are less time impoverished than any of the people that we know. And, many of our family and friends have gone through, many, university, and, have very high wages and are completely time impoverished. And so while people might say, yeah, but you have to, go into the forest and cut your wood in order to get a cup of tea, but it's like, that's relationship. That is like soul. That, the forest is a place where our souls reside. So we go in there and we commune with the local wrens and the local yellow robins and the corellas and the, all the birds of the forest. And the gathering of wood to make the cup of tea is actually a very beautiful thing. Whereas we've both done, Meg and I have both done hours and hours and hours of meaningless work to pay bills. And what we found instead of what we used to do, what I used to do as a builder, is say, if I can just take on this many more jobs and then I'll be able to retire and get onto my permaculture. It's like we actually got to a point where saying, no, let's go as much without money as we can. And so we're now, after 10 years of this slow step-by-step transition, not trying to do too much too quickly, but this slow step-by-step transition, we are only 25% reliant on the monetary economy. And that's pretty much our mortgage and our rates, in order to have tenure, as dubious and problematic as that is, but to have tenure to some land in which to then augment a completely different economic reality, and to really be in charge of our time. And therefore, if we want to go into the forest and get wood, or we want to write a song, or we want to go and do work at the community gardens, or we want to take over a whole bunch of eggs to neighbors, and you know, get I don't know, in not because we expect it, but to receive the flow of gifts come back. Because if we've got time, if we're making time for gifts to flow, then what we've found over those 10 years is that the gifts really flow back. And so it's to give is really important, and to receive is really important, and to feel worthy enough to receive a gift is a big thing in our culture, which is so dominant about money, and power is money. And if you've got money, you can do stuff. But, you know, we're a bit funny about, and when I say our culture, I say the dominant culture in Australia, a bit funny about receiving gifts. And so I say, we say, let the gifts flow, because that's the way to becoming free people.
Yeah, it's a very connected to permaculture. Like I can see all sorts of little principles and everything floating around, like small and so solutions, and yeah, sounds amazing. So would you guys like to be part of a breakout room, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool, nice. All right, I'll open them up and we'll chat for a bit. So just about what kind of has resonated with you, and what inspires you, and maybe what would you like to do with what
Megan, Patrick, and
what
Woody
you've
just
learned.
said. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Lots of food for thought for us all to go and talk about. And then when we come back, don't go away, because when we come back, we have
songs, slam poetry,
and a report back in from Roland, who's here, who we can't see. We saw her before, but we've got a little update from her about what's happening in the refugee camps and the work she's been doing. So stick around afterwards as well, everyone. So see you soon.
Yeah.
We'd like to welcome Roland. So Roland is actually here, but I'm not sure how well she might be able to join in. And her brother was also here.
Tosha Jospin.
Oh, Jospin is her younger brother. And so earlier we were hoping that Roland might be able to share with you on this show, but sometimes her internet's not quite strong enough. So she pre-recorded a little overview of what she's been doing, and I sort of put some pictures over the top of some of the different things she's been sending through. She's 18, I think she's 18 still, maybe 19, and she did a Permayouth course with Leaky not that long ago, and has then since been traveling from refugee settlement to refugee settlement in a supporting teacher role as an apprentice permaculture teacher, and now is back in her own camp, where Nakivale refugee settlement in Uganda, where she's hopefully, when all the lockdown finishes, going to start being able to sort of teach more there, and then also continue on doing permaculture teaching in various refugee settlements. So this is her short update, and then we'll hear a song that she's part of that's a collaboration between a number of different refugee settlements.
Hi, my name is Asi Roland. I am a permaculture teacher and Permayouth mentor. I do teach permaculture in refugee camps in East Africa. I've been through many of the camps in Uganda, but hope after this lockdown I can travel to other places to explore more and teach about permaculture. We've been teaching through many ways. We have songs. We do teach through songs, and it's been really a good way, because upon listening to a song, people do get inspired through the work that we do. We also use stories. We have stories, mostly success stories about the work that we've been doing, because we do share a lot. We work with people who are mostly unable to make something, or maybe who thought they couldn't make something. And then after learning permaculture, they are very inspired, and then we get success stories from them. So it's also a good way when people do listen to others' success stories that makes them motivated too. I also write small books about some practicals of permaculture, and after the lockdown, I'm planning on sharing it with children too, because permaculture is not only for adults, but children also should grow up having that sense, understanding permaculture, understanding the world, and getting to know what's going on and how they can change, how they can improve what's going on and make a good change. They should grow up knowing that, because they are the future. So the books will be printed and given to the children, and then I will be making sessions with them whenever I'm available, and I'll really be happy of that. Thank you.
So now we're going to show you a collaboration song from 3 refugee camps in Uganda. So Nakavale Refugee Camp, Rwanda Refugee Camp, and Kiaka Refugee Camp. And this is the second collaboration song they've done. And we don't have subtitles yet, but we're working on it. And I'll just show you that now.
Maji machafu tusinywe tena, misitu tusiende tena. Permaculture imeleta njia fupi kwa kurahisisha maisha, kama vile kutengeneza makala na mengi tumeyajua. Permaculture inatufundisha tukipanda mboga tusiweke kemikali, afya zetu ziwe sawa, mboga tusiweke dawa, mazingira yawe sawa salama. Angalia watoto wanatumia mboga, pia maji masafi, afya zao ni nzuri. Thank you Permaculture kuleta mambo mapya hapa kwetu Chaka, tunashukuru. We say thank you Permaculture, we say thank you. God bless you Permaculture, we love you. You've made our life so easy. Now we drink pure water, we use no comedy charcoal. Vegetables our food.
Millions of lives are endangered because of the waste that we produce every day. Hundreds of children are dying of cholera brought by these wastes. But we get a clean environment, care for our nature by reusing and recycling all the waste into new materials. We clean our towns, villages and homes, and we make life cooler every day because of permaculture. Permaculture is the hope of the humanity. It's the way that leads us to a better future.
Permaculture makara yawe turayashima, na muntu kijya mu isamba gushaka inkwi. Yabas wadufashije kugabanya ihungabana ry'ikirere, turacana iwacu twatandukanye n'imyotsi. Urubyiruko narwo reka tugushime, twahuguwe byinshi Chaka turashima. Waduhaye aho twidagadurira, tubona ibyo gukora, nidufite umwanya wo gukora.
We say thank you Permaculture, we say thank you. God bless you Permaculture, we love you. You made our life so easy. Now we drink pure water, we use no comedy charcoal. Vegetables our food. The Permaculture Education Institute, Permayouth, Moral Gambo, teacher Leaky, teaches permaculture in East Africa, refugee camps.
Roland Asima.
We say thank you Permaculture, we say thank you. God bless you Permaculture, we love you.
Refugee in many ways. We have songs, we teach through songs, and it's been really good way, because upon this little song, people will get inspired through the work that we do. We also use stories. We have stories mostly see success stories about the work that we've been doing, because we do share a lot. We work with people who are mostly unable to make something, or maybe who thought they couldn't make something. And
So
then
that's the latest
after
one. And,
learning permaculture, they are very
who was
inspired
talking
and then get
at the end
success
was
stories from them.
Ballard as well.
So it's also a
yeah.
good way when
And
people do listen to
we
others'
did mention it last
success
time, but it's really
stories
exciting
that
because there's
makes
this
them
global
motivated to.
Permayouth music project that is happening.
I also
that is
write
connected through
small
what's happening
books
with the
about
Permaculture
some
magazine, what's happening in the refugee
practicals of
settlement, what's
permaculture,
happening here
and
with communities in
after
Australia.
the lockdown,
And, so right this moment,
I'm planning on sharing it with children too, because permaculture is not only for adults, but children also should grow up having that sense, understanding permaculture, understanding the world, and getting to know what's going on and how they can change, how they can improve what's going on and make a good change. They should grow up knowing that,
Right, which is the Grateful
because
Dead.
they are the
The
future.
Grateful Dead's foundation for all those.
So the
so
books should
excited
be
by this idea
printed
that's come out of
and
the
given to the
Permayouth
children,
festivals,
and
that they're
then
now starting to
I
find
would be
other Permayouth studios. So
making
there's gonna be
sessions with
one
them
that's just started
whenever I'm
up in,
available,
Indian reservation
and
in
I will
North
really
America,
be
in Permute
happy of that.
reservation.
Thank
Other
you.
refugee settlements are going to start building these too. So it's a really exciting possibility. And also looking at how we can connect up the refugee music makers over at WOMAD in Europe or UK next year, COVID willing. So it's a really amazing connection that's happening. And particularly this whole music program started because after doing Permayouth programs, they said, look, the way that we can get this out further and faster is through music, because we all need this. And this is about us building resilience and getting access to food.
And celebrating as well, celebrating life and the things that we have.
So there's a number of people here who are actually from the refugee settlement. So hi to all of you, and thank you so much for sharing these and sharing all of your insights with us about how permaculture is relevant to what you do, and then sharing that back at us, because we learn so much in that process too.
And so now moving on to a different type of art, we're handing it over to Eve now, who is our resident slam poet and has got a new slam poem to share with us all. Handing it to you, Eve.
Hi, thanks, Maya. So as most of you know, my name's Eve Ballard and I am a slam poet. So I believe that spoken word poetry can connect people together through words and verse. So I'm here today to connect with you all with a poem I've written called Tears from a Broken Bird. I stand in the void of disturbed and gullible times, gazing at the morning shimmering light, trying to read between the lines. A regent honey-eater is hatching in a harlequin hush, critically endangered. My cheeks are aflame and blushed. I listen intently in the loneliness of the day for any noises. A howl, a cry, escapes from the nest above that represents a million voices. I stand still, listening to the rhythm of what my heart makes, like a vase sitting on a nightstand, cold, lonely, with a silent ache. But wait, I hear the piercing shriek of an eastern osprey diving deep for slippery prey, and the soothing moan of a morning dove gently cooing throughout the day. The penetrating screech of a red-tailed cockatoo perched on a high treetop, and the wind whooshing under proud wedge-tailed eagle wings paralyzing life to stop. I think I hear the harmonious warning of the threatened eastern kulu. I am transfixed. But instead it's the bubbling squeal of the southern emu wren scolding from a dense bundle of sticks. I hang on to every sound, knowing as the numbers dwindle, their cry will be forgotten and die out. Extinction, ecological destruction, and environmental loss. That's the problem you hear me shout. Animals' features are helpless victims of man's appetite to conquer and survive. All I want is for the animal kingdom to prosper and to thrive. On the endangered list, new species every day fall to extinction. They are sacrificed for success of humankind without any convictions. So many habitats are now weak, fragile, vulnerable, and dying. Life on Earth is like a spider web when you have extinctions. Little pieces of the web start untying. When extinctions start accelerating, the web starts breaking beyond repair. I cannot, will not, stay sitting idly in my armchair. We will suffer terrible losses unless we shake off our delusions, break free from deception so deep and move towards solutions. Because see, we humans give little persistence concepts unpleasant. Just give us an out, an excuse, a distraction, an antidepressant. Let's peel back our masks, have a grand reveal of our true human nature to see. Our deception is so deep it may be impossible to render from our collective reality. We know a nuclear war would render the planet inhospitable to life. We tend to forget that the constant increasing destruction of habitats will have the same effect on wildlife. The future of the animal kingdom is inflicted with fragility. A steer towards a better future is not beyond our ability. If we put our benefit to humans at the forefront of animal conservation, human existence depends on nature, and that's no exaggeration. No more will butterfly nor bird will be seen in flight or heard. They are dependent for their survival and our goodwill transferred. Hang on to the specimen that occasionally blunders out the undergrowth in some unlooked for place. An appreciation for the plight of wildlife's fate. The effect of extending empathy to animals would be earth-changing, and the hope that they will not vanish from the vocabulary of our children's campaigning. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Amazing, Eve.
Every time you seem to touch on some different issue, from extinction to deforestation to climate change, and blows me away.
Yeah, Megan, Patrick and Woody, it's Eve has her own YouTube channel with, and not all of her, but a number of her spoken word poems on there. It's absolutely brilliant. Every time she just gives me tingles up my spine, and
yeah,
I'm sure
Eve, if you want to put that your
yeah,
link in the
can you
chat.
share that, Eve? That would be so great. Thank you.
Eve. Yeah, that was really, really beautiful to hear and to see. We'd love to follow you on YouTube.
Thank you.
So now we're very nearly ending this festival, to my dismay. Yeah, Barbara?
I would like to get to know where I can get into contact to refugee camps, because we have this project at the EDE to put a sacred heaven, and there's one Kajosi, he is in a camp inside, but we want to make a platform where people they need to be settled they should get it there. And so when I have more contacts to these refugee camps, I can get more ideas, more information, what they really need.
So if anyone from the camps who's currently here in this call would like Barbara to get in touch with them, you might like to just have a chat in the send her your email in the chat privately if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, I can do it, of course.
Yeah,
cool.
Okay, thanks, Barbara.
So how you can get involved with Permayouth if you haven't already. So you can, we have a YouTube channel too, and we have films, and you're welcome to share any of your films that you make or create on YouTube, and we'll be happy to put it up on the Permayouth YouTube channel. If you want to do a garden tour, or like something about your school or homeschooling, or something about climate change, whatever, we're happy to put it up there. Also, if you want to write some music too and share it with us, that would be great. If you want to put an article in the newsletter, and also sign up for that if you haven't already on permayouth.org. And yeah, and also what we have, which is closing in 3 days, is the Permayouth photography competition. So we've got $1,000 worth in prizes, and so that's closing very soon, and it's for people 22 years and under, and the theme is regeneration. So if you'd like to put your entries in quickly for that, then they're still open, but just.
Yeah, so if you go to the permayouth.org website that Maya just popped in the chat.
There's on the menu bar, there's a photography prize.
Yeah, so please share it with anyone you know as well. So what we're planning to do with this is that there's lots of different categories, so there's heaps of chances to win a prize as part of this. We will be making a virtual gallery so that we can walk through and see everyone's photographs and the stories of regeneration that are being shared from around the world. We've got entries from most continents so far, which is fantastic. And
except Antarctica,
obviously. Yeah. and then the Permaculture magazine in the United Kingdom has offered to put into their print magazine and also through their social media
the
winning prize. So this is a chance to kind of get your photograph actually in a magazine and to get some prize money. So it's very, very cool. So I hope that you consider applying. There's 2 photos, and
also to share it out to anyone else that you know who might be interested too. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you can continue to connect with Permayouth, and I hope that you all enjoyed being here today. Thank you again for being our guests today, Meg, Patrick and Woody. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you again for having us. We really love what you all are doing.
And safe journey on your wonderful adventure. I'm going to be following with much interest. I subscribed to your journey yesterday, so I'm looking forward to keeping up with what you're doing, and one day you might actually come around our way, and that would be
welcome to come and visit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful day, evening. Thank you.
And we will be sharing this recording so
Yes.
that you can share it with your friends if they'd like to watch later on.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.